Hey all, if you've been following our adventures, you know my latest cross-country hike ended early this year after a series of injuries around Moab, Utah. When I made it back to Southern California, since I couldn't hike, Jen and I scrambled to figure out what we could do over the week of Thanksgiving that would keep me off my feet. After a lot of last-minute scrambling, we managed to pull off a week-long trip to Bonaire, aka the shore diving paradise of the Caribbean. We had an amazing time. We will absolutely be going back, probably next Thanksgiving, but we actually had another dive trip already planned over Christmas. Christmas and New Year's has now become the time of year where we apologetically ditch both sides of our families and do some sort of big away trip. This is because, as a teacher, Jen just doesn't get many big chunks of vacation time outside of summer, where we're doing our hikes, where we have time to fly someplace interesting. Last year, we did Socorro Islands down in Mexico, where we really enjoyed all the big manta and shark interactions, but came off of it really wanting to go back to an area that had a lot of coral and biodiversity. Enter Raja Ampat in Indonesia. Part of the Coral Triangle and commonly known both as a biodiversity capital of the world and one of the top destinations for scuba diving, we'd previously shied away from it thanks to the combination of atrocious travel required to get there from the western US and a reputation for challenging currents. These days were a bit more seasoned and a bit more adventurous, so we decided it was time. While there are shore diving resorts in Raja, it's such a large area that it makes a lot more sense to do a liveaboard. Liveaboards are boats which are basically floating hotels crossed with a dive platform. They move around between dive sites, giving you a chance to do 4-ish dives a day without having to mess with any of the hassles of getting new tanks or lugging around gear. Basically, just fall off the boat and enjoy diving. They are hands down the most efficient way to go about doing a lot of varied diving in a limited amount of time. We've only been able to do a handful of these due to the cost and Jen's vacation time limitations. We have done enough that we've started to build a preference for what we want out of them. Private 2-person cabins, dive groups with 4 guests to a guide, and considering all the boats sinking and burning lately, if you're following the news, something with a good safety record and ideally staffed by guides who show a reasonable amount of caution, which you'd think would be a little more common considering how remote some of these areas are and how far you are from help, but catch me over a beer sometime and I can give you some unfortunate stories. This time we found a handful of options that we could make work, which we narrowed down to the Blue Manta and the Ilike before settling on the latter. We picked the Ilike because it was a reasonable size, relatively affordable, as these things go, and checked our other boxes except for the fact it had quarters below deck. A number of years ago, Jen and I were uncomfortably close to being on the Conception, a liveaboard that caught fire off Catalina out here in Southern California, killing 34 people. It was enough to make us a bit paranoid on escape routes and boat management in general. We struggled a bit to find reliable information on the Ilike beyond their, admittedly nice website. I don't fully trust any booking site like Patty or Liveaboard since I figure they edit out bad reviews. Generally, I want to see a post on Reddit or Scubaboard that sounds like they're reasonably experienced people giving a balanced view. We eventually found enough that we were satisfied and booked the trip way back in February since these things tend to fill up early. I'll cover more on the actual boat next episode, but before we could even set foot on board, we had to make it out to Sorong, Indonesia, aka the port where all the Raja Ampat boats generally depart from. And that was going to be painful. 2:30 and we are leaving Ramona, and per Blondie, I will be in Raja Ampat in just a few hours, I hope. Because I'm not sure I could handle it if somebody was going to stick me in a plane for 17 hours each way. And that was only the start. There's 2 hotels until we get where we're going. This is going to be bad. Okay, that is kind of epic looking. Also kind of expensive looking. And here is not quite a panic, but maybe a little more rushing than we would ideally want. Oh, I haven't crammed schoolwork that hard since, never mind. And if this looks like a scene from the Bonaire videos, no, because Jen was wearing the proper shoes that time, and Matt got a sandwich. Here we go, just like the Bonaire video. Now Jen is doing a technique where she spreads her smelly Sports Pro and underwear everywhere, so nobody is going to steal the car. They might try, but they go in and they're like, Stinky gym clothes everywhere. Let's break into the other car.
It's so it doesn't mold.
Yeah. Mush, Blondie! We did unpack, but I left most of the dive gear alone, just dried it out because I knew we were just doing this again. And that actually was good because traffic was worse than expected.
So like, you know, like I just felt like, let me just like show that like I am a good worker by like saying like I can stay and finish everybody else's task. You know what I mean? Like.
Ooh, it looks like we're in business class. As it turns out, this flight is actually the 6th longest nonstop flight that exists. Don't get me wrong, Singapore Airlines is pretty much my favorite airline, and they do take good care of you, but it just hurts to sit there for 17 hours. Mush, Andy. So we are in Singapore. The 17-hour flight was about as pleasant as you would imagine. My legs were killing me. So from now on, it's actually easier. It's short flights. We have an hour and 40-minute flight, I think, to Jakarta, where we have a hotel, because we have like a 10, 11-hour layover, and then we take a local Indonesian flight from Jakarta to Sorong, so it should be easier. And Jen is currently researching Airbnbs for next winter because we have to get those plans going. It's hard to see in the background, but that dome out the window is actually the fancy mall they have with a giant indoor waterfall, but we have to go through customs in order to see it. So every time we're here, we're always like, oh, we should go see that. And then we just see the butterfly garden and sit here and look at Airbnbs. Fun times. Oh, fun times. We get screened at each gate here. I got to guide for a couple of days. And we have arrived in Jakarta, and now we're getting a hotel until 10 o'clock at night, and then we come back to get on a 4-hour flight. The even better thing is we do this, so then we land in Sorong only to have 6 hours before we can check into our other hotel, the hotel which gets us to the start of the boat adventure. While the previous 2 flights had been international, we were now transferring to a domestic airline to go from Jakarta to Sorong, so we had to grab our luggage. We had a lot of trouble actually finding the hotel. So because we had a 10+ hour layover and we knew it was going to be kind of grueling with that 17-hour flight, we got a hotel. But it's a little funny because we fly out at midnight. There's only 1 flight to Sorong from Jakarta every day. Apparently, Sorong's where the boat leaves. We are a bit on the tired side. And sadly, after a very awesome amount of sleep, we are sadly having to get back on a plane, and we don't know what time it is. So we don't know, is it breakfast, dinner, lunch? And once again, we were advised to get to the airport like 2 hours early. And once again, we just shot through security. So we are now on the domestic end of the flight. So that's why we had to check out and check back in. So we have a 4-hour flight arriving very early in the morning that isn't going to leave for a couple of hours now. We're trying to find food. I sent the vegetarian for food and I've been guarding. She got me chicken and I'm like, giant box, wow, how much chicken did you get me? But as it turned out, she got me a piece of chicken.
How much pieces of chicken do you need?
Oh, apparently only 1. Bondi, we missed out on getting Indonesian Subway. And 6 a.m. local, and we made it. And now for the next big adventure, trying to get to the airport that we can't check into for like 6 hours. Blondie, I feel like we're doing all this the hard way. For the record, the hard part was trying to cross the road without getting run over. Our taxi didn't work out, but we're pretty sure that's our hotel. So many learning opportunities, Blondie, just look at it that way. And welcome to our temporary travel abode. They were able to get us in a little earlier after a slightly chaotic walk in the rain from the airport. So another basic hotel room, and the boat is going to pick us up early in the morning, or the people pick us up and then take us to the boat, and then we'll be on there for the next 11 days. While all the food at the hotel, other than the breakfast buffet, was kind of meh, we did rather like the view from the rooftop restaurant. Unfortunately, the traffic noise was kind of ever present, even inside of our room.